We used to say this campaign will go after new customers, this campaign will go after returning customers. What Meta or Google is measuring now is completely disconnected.
One of our larger beauty accounts was getting about a $26 to $27 CPA, a cost to acquire a new customer. And now it's down to under 7 using this strategy. How are we getting these kind of results, and what's the key rule?
Just counting a sale is not enough anymore. Not enough to scale. And so what we're doing is...
Hello and welcome to the Perpetual Traffic Podcast. This is your host, Ralph Burns, founder and CEO of Tier 11, alongside not Lauren Petrullo as your guest. This is actually John Moran in the flesh.
I know.
I can't believe it. He's like sitting here. We are in San Diego, obviously a beautiful view of the San Diego Bay here. We're here for Growth Hacking Live. John's going to be speaking in a couple of hours.
Yep.
And we just grabbed him and say, come on, Perpetual Traffic, give us a little preview of what you're going to be talking about here. Great conference so far, hosted by our friend Qasim Aslam. Perpetual Traffic listeners will obviously know who that is, the former co-host here. But John, great to have you. First off, we just plucked you out of the crowd and said, come on upstairs and let's record. Usually it's me and you in 2 different locations, you doing lots of screen sharing, which is some of our best episodes. And obviously we'll leave some of the most popular episodes in the show notes at perpetualtraffic.com, of course. But today you're going to be talking about a lot of the things that we talk about every single week on our Ad Lab series on YouTube, 2:30 every week, every Friday. I don't know if it's going to be this week, but I think it's going to be traveling. But anyway, every week, 2:30 Eastern over on YouTube at the Tier 11 YouTube channel.
Yeah, on Fridays.
Fridays. A lot of fun. We always do that. But today you're going to be talking about all of those things that we discuss, but you actually have sort of a name for it now.
A workable name.
A workable name. We've been talking about it like content diversification, cAPI imports, obviously Tier 11 data suite. Summarize for people who maybe have not had the opportunity to see any of those lives.
Yeah.
Like, what exactly are you doing between Meta and Google to get the great results? And one of the results I texted you yesterday is that our team is super ecstatic about this, is that one of our larger beauty accounts was getting about a $26 to $27 NCAC, or what we used to call a CPA, a cost to acquire a new customer. And now it's down to under 7 using this strategy. So from 26 to 7, and now it's a matter of scaling. And their NCAC target, I believe, is 10 or 12. So these are like amazing results. Even like our growth strategist, Cole, is like, I can't believe this works as well as it does. So spill the goods, like explain it sort of in theory without the ability to screen share here. I know you love to do that, but it's probably easier.
It's like a speech impediment.
I know, it's just to talk through it. So what exactly is it? How are we getting these kind of results? And what's the key rule?
I think for the main point that can kind of put your mind into the right frame of understanding is to know that we've been evolving in the digital media from before, where we had our targeting, we had our ads, we chose the demographics, the psychographics, the geographics. It was very manual, and we were able to attract people that we want to attract with our ads through the paid media platforms, whether it be Google or Meta. And that has since changed gradually. It's like the frog in boiling water, where we don't really feel it until we take a step back and say, wow, the landscape has really changed. And what has changed into is auto targeting, auto bidding. The remarketing has kind of been rolled in. The prospecting has kind of been rolled in, all down into more singular campaigns. So we had a massive amount of granularity. It wasn't really important to track new versus returning or track omni-channel traffic, which means my Meta is going to remarket Google traffic and our Google is going to remarket Meta traffic. You can set that up as a campaign. Remember RLSAs, the remarketing list for search ads. You're like, if they've been to our site and if they came from Google and if they look at this product, they're going to see this ad. Right. That's all gone now. They've eroded it piece by piece. Because of that, we have now had to rethink the way that we're optimizing for results. Just counting a sale is not enough anymore. Not enough to scale. Yeah. And so what we're doing is we're changing what has been counted as simply a sale to something more specific, where if it's a company goal or is that campaign goal, we used to say this campaign will go after new customers, this campaign will go after returning customers.
Right.
And now that they're combined into one, people still don't necessarily optimize differently. They still put in the ads, they still crank up the ad spend. But what they're measuring as a growth of their business versus what Meta or Google is measuring now is completely disconnected. Because when Google and Meta have merged the targeting and the tracking, now that they merged everything kind of into one, like Meta, or Google merged everything into one, i.e. Performance Max and Demand Gen. Now, if every platform is counting simply a lead and or a sale, your goal for your company is now disconnected from what Meta and Google think. And now Meta and Google will think something's happening and maybe pat themselves on the back.
Yep.
But what we're measuring outside of Google and Meta, like I need more new customers, I need to sell more shoes, I need to sell the brown shoes, I need more subscriptions, I need more subscriptions on this product. Mm-hmm. And if they like that, I can then sell them this product. All that cannot be achieved by just counting a purchase. And so I believe that the introduction of third-party metrics, Wicked Reports, Northbeam, High Roast, Triple Whale, all of those have come out as to try to deliver more clarity as to what the black box is doing. But we haven't really taken an approach to, can we change the black box or can we influence the black box differently? Mm-hmm. And so that's what the kind of what we call first click edge tagged customer imports is doing, is we are only allowing those platforms to count what we allow them to count because that is aligned with our business model. Right. I mean, more new customers, only allowed to count the customers. Need more new subscribers, only count new subscribers. You need more sales of the brown shoes in size 12 in New York, then that is only going to count the sales of the brown shoes in size 12 in New York. So that you, the business owner or the agency, and Meta and Google are now aligned in your goals. And I think that's the biggest thing is if Google and Meta thinks everything is normal and operating fine and you're panicking, you can't even pick up the phone and call Google and be like, what are you doing? It thinks it's doing well. It's a machine.
Right. The big question that I get is, well, if I just put in exclusions inside my Meta campaigns, then I'm fine. I take out my, all my previous customers or all my previous visitors, like my non-warm traffic, and I want to target cold traffic. And then I install the event, which is purchase. And, it seems like I'm doing pretty well. Mm-hmm. Like my Meta ads platform or Facebook ads manager looks pretty good. However, when I check Shopify on my bank account, there might be sort of a slightly different story. So, And explaining this to people I was on a call with a client yesterday where I was explaining this. It's like the platforms themselves are unto themselves are not accurate. You have to take sort of the next step of granularity. And this is this cAPI import edge tag technology plus content diversification, which is a whole other thing, which you're sort of like trying to name here. But like, that's where you actually get the real source of truth. Because at the end of the day, marketing is about acquiring new customers and growing businesses. Right.
Yeah.
And the platforms themselves will say, hey, we're doing great. I know we've talked about this hundreds of times on our lives, when in actuality, it's not moving any metrics, like business metrics for the business forward.
Right.
And that's really the big change right now. And that's what this breakthrough is all about.
Yeah. The way that I've been thinking about it or trying to explain it, and this is actually on the presentation today, is a picture of cloud. And the cloud is the website traffic that your brand has. So you have this kind of like cloud over your website. And there is traffic coming from all channels. You have direct, you have organic, you have email, you have influencer, you have Google, you have Meta, you have TikTok, you have Pinterest, you have everything. And it's all going into one area called your website. And then that cloud has traffic flowing in and out. Now, if you take Meta as an example and you just kind of slap it over top, Meta, like the remarketing will be covering all of that cloud. And then on Google, you have another kind of overlay that is on top of Meta as the same size that also covers that entire cloud.
Right.
So Meta and Google will be able to identify and also attribute anything that they would like to themselves, even without having a click take place. And so when you think, well, my bank account is disconnected from my Meta account or my bank account's disconnected from my Google Ads account, it's sort of not, because it is attributing to itself. Like, those metrics are correct. You did have all of those sales. They just didn't come from there. And what that is doing inside of the ecosystem that is Meta or Google, and I say this as a kind of a quote, it is the conversions are training an algorithm to repeat an action it was never responsible for in the first place. And And that is what is causing the disconnect between I can't scale, I crank up ad spend, but I don't really see more net new. With more ad spend, it will attribute more because it's running longer in the day or is running more often during that day. So the metrics will go up, right? But that's just because it's counting more of the activity you already have. So every dollar you put in means it can attribute to itself another sale. So you think, wow, look at my scale, but it's not actually happening. And that's because the meta remarketing, essentially the pixel or Google Ads, the tag, sees all traffic from all sources and can take credit through their model data and their attribution model to say, you've had 58 sales today and it came from this campaign. Well, did they click? No. Did they start there? No. Was it a new customer? No. Okay. So that's where everything's simply being counted as an event, but not having the guardrails of, is it new? Did it come from you? And did they even engage in an ad from a click perspective? That's what people just assume happened. And that's where it breaks down.
Right. Explain from a technical standpoint, like what this kind of does without getting too in the weeds, because this is this edge tag technology. And obviously you can learn more about like the Tier 11 data suite and just the edge tag technology over at tier11.com/data suite. But there are other ways in which to work this. Like we figured it out through a company called Blotout. We obviously use Wicked Reports. We have our own data warehouse. We're capturing basically the click and the data on the edge without it being blocked by all the privacy blockers, iOS 14 and all the other ones that have come out since then, ad blockers, you name it. But this cAPI import thing that we've been talking about is kind of a separate, is a new animal here.
Yeah.
And it really gets even more granular where you can, if let's say you have 10 SKUs, you can target specific SKUs, not just a purchase event, but this is like the old custom conversion way back when, Facebook and Meta first started, but it's like, it's to the next level. And then you can you can actually target new customers versus returning customers specifically.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where the key is. And then you can actually see the breakdown. It's never going to be 100% new customers. There's always going to be some return customers in that.
Yep.
But explain like how that all works technically without getting too in the weeds, because most of the people that are listening are directors of marketing and marketers and probably not like development people.
So I guess, I'll simplify the overview first before going too technical. Is we only allow Meta and Google to count did it come from that channel? Is it actually a click in that channel? And is it the first click?
Yep.
Because that is a repeatable, scalable action. Did it come from that channel by a click? Yes. Is it the first time they've ever visited my site? Yes. So now we know that the conversion that we're tracking had to have actually come from that campaign and that ad set and that ad. There's no question about it. It has to start there. So that was the first thing we had to cover is, did it actually come from there? Yes. That's first click. So in the first click edge tag imports, that's the first click portion. Now, edge tag basically means that we are tagging a user on the way to the website, not after they've been on the website and had something load afterwards. GA4 actually now, this is in Google's literature, GA4 will not actually count a session, user, visitor, nothing. It will be completely blank if they didn't hit accept all cookies. So GA4 will not. I was on a call with Google this morning. They confirmed it. They gave me the transcript of the message and everything. It's actually in some of their literature. So for example, if you're importing GA4 events into Google and someone didn't even click consent mode of yes, that metric is not even visible. So edge tag means before we hit the privacy issues, before we hit consent mode, before we have ad blockers that are gonna stop the tracking on the website, it's being tagged on the way from the actual domain.
Yeah.
So when they're connecting to the www from anywhere on the way to the host, which is where your website lives, as it gets like in the car on the way, we take a picture of them. Now we know who they are. And because they were connecting to the website, we know where they were from.
You gave a great analogy on this once. I was going to continue.
Yeah.
About the store and the parking lot.
We tag them in the parking lot before they get into the store. Exactly.
Right.
Yep. And so now we have first click. We know where it actually came from. Edge tag, which means the data is very, very clean. I mean, the cleanest and purest that we can actually get it with the technology that we have today is we can't get any more accurate.
Yeah.
And now the imports, those are what we're trying to achieve as a conversion event in that campaign. So it could be anything that we want. I mean, you can label these things essentially anything you want. You can say, I need to have, a new customer, or I need to count a conversion as a returning customer. You can even actually, since we know where the data is, we can count conversions in Google that says, did they actually come from Google or did they come from Meta first? So we can even separate out, Google had 100 conversions today that came from Google, and I had 127 because 27 of those actually started on Facebook. We can get extremely granular. We can also see what is actually being purchased. So I need a new customer of a product, or I need a returning customer of this product because it might be a cross-sell or upsell. So anything that you want to track as a goal where you're allowing Google or Meta to pat themselves on the back because that number is going up, you get to decide what that is now. So not just a purchase, because it might be a new returning, might come from a different channel, may not even have actually had a click on it. But when you say, I need to have it, make sure it came from Google, I need to make sure the data is clean, and I need Google and Meta to actually optimize off of what I want them to optimize, which is my business goal. That is now first click edge tag cAPI imports.
Got it. All we know is that it works. And accordingly, in the source of truth, which is the CRM and or inside Shopify, let's use that as an example in an e-commerce store, we see sales of new customers. It's like the correlation. And once again, we have hundreds of, well, maybe not hundreds, multiple dozens of shows over at the Tier 11 YouTube channel for myself and John on the Ad Lab that we do every single Friday, where we go through screen shares of all of this sort of stuff. I was at a Meta conference last week, and this was an interesting thing. And I actually had this question asked to me this week. I don't know if I answered it correctly, so I'm going to ask it to you. Is it for millennials and Gen Z, the majority of the ads and or the content that they view does not have a click?
Yeah.
So accordingly, 50 to 60% of the content now that's actually being viewed on the Meta platform is on Reels.
Yeah.
Which usually does not have a click, but it has a view. So if you are showing, and we're doing, the way in which you set up a campaign is one campaign, one ad set, and then lots of different pieces of content, which we can talk about. Oftentimes, a lot of that content, a lot of those ads, when they're shown, there is no click. What do you do there? And how do you mesh the source of truth with the actual ad platform in order to know which ads, what type of content is resonating with the audience?
Yeah. So this actually ties into two parts that I think is actually, that answers the other question is what are we doing on Google and Meta, and how are we tying those together? What we have to look at is, this is now more of a function of the media buyer. So the media buyer who's in charge of Google or Meta is making very specific decisions. Typically it's by CPA. What has the best ROAS, what has the best CPA?
Yep.
Now what we have to look at is your targeting is actually at the creative level. And it's actually the same thing for Performance Max and Demand Gen. It's still the creative level. So if you're thinking about, well, if my Meta, my Google, my Reels, my stories, my YouTube, my Shorts, my everything is at the creative level, then we have to find consistency and congruency in not only our execution, but also our nomenclature. So if we're looking at I'll give us an example. Like, you have a Remarkable tab here. Mm-hmm. And this thing is a really, really cool Remarkable tab. Now, there is a few different concepts that we can try to use to sell this. So green, that's going to be one of them. So no more paper. Like, you don't actually have to cut down trees, and you're better for the environment. So that's a concept. Right. And now that concept is going to be executed between Meta and YouTube, Google and Meta as an example. And that concept is going to be tested in a few different variations. You're going to have your stories. You're going to have your feed items. You're going to have your YouTube shorts. You're going to have to disseminate those creatives across all of the platforms. And when you're using your click attributed conversions, which is what we import, you're going to see some pretty terrible CPAs, because only if you think about it, if you have a 3% click-through rate, 97% of the people out of 100 cannot be tracked.
Right.
So those CPAs look really, really horrible. Plus, as they're only new customers, it's going to even look worse inside the platform.
Right.
So the way that we look at the data is now much different. We know it's fragmented, but we also know that it's highly directional. Mm-hmm. So if we're saying, okay, our first concept is the green concept, how is that doing? We have X amount of ad spend in and X amount of sales in, and it's coming in at a specific cost to acquire first time customer and the amount of customers. Okay, now let's try a different concept. The other one is going to be how it's thin and lightweight. So no longer carrying this big ream of paper and going through 75 pages and losing things. It has a table of content. It's thin, it's light, it's sleek, it's sexy, and it's easy to carry around with you. Okay, so that's another concept. Mm-hmm. So that is now in addition to. We have that ads, those ads are created, it's delineated, and then it is going to be measured as well. Right. So if we're looking at hyper specifically, yeah, it's going to be messed up because people are watching content. But I still do believe that people are going to be clicking on ads. I don't think that that's going to be ever something that's going to go away. It will absolutely be reduced. But the flip side to that is with less ad clicks, simply have to be okay with a higher in-platform CPA or a lower platform ROAS. But if our sales are increasing and the cost to acquire first-time customer globally is being acquired, and we're testing different concepts over time and comparing those concepts, we're still measuring apples to apples because, well, people only clicked on this half the time, or just one concept half the time, and then the other concept, they click maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. Right. But we have to measure those congruently. But as long as we're congruent in our messaging across all platforms, now we're testing real marketing again, rather than letting the data-driven attribution dictate the success of our company.
So you're assuming that the concept, like green versus lightweight, not carrying around a stack of paper, like basically two different ideas to sell the concept of a Remarkable 2. Those ads that have those concepts, some are going to have a lot of views, obviously, a lot of impressions, but then you're still using the clicks as the proxy as to whether or not, even if it's a very small portion overall, it might be maybe 10% of the actual views of the ad might be a click. Yep. You're still using the click as the source of truth, as to say, all right, green is working better than thin, light, and not carrying around a ream of paper.
Right.
These two concepts selling this, this product. I've actually done a podcast. How they actually sold me. It's really
sponsored by
Remarkable 2. They're watching. They should be a sponsor of the show. We talk about it enough. So that idea of no click, you're still using the click as your directional, piece of data to say, okay, this is an ad that resonates. I need more of that, or I need less of it, or whatever it is.
That's true. We would say, okay, that concept is working. Is it working on TikTok? Is it working on YouTube Shorts? Is it working on horizontal? Is it working on Reels? Is it working on stories? Is it working on feeds? Yep. I doubt you're going to have two different concepts that do a perfect 50-50 equal split. You're going to have it leaning one way or leaning the other way more often. Okay. And so I do believe that you're going to see as you take the data and you kind of distill it down to just what happened on all the platforms in these two different concepts, you're going to find a winner. But I think the bigger picture in the click imports is what we're attempting to do, not only be able to measure, but to also retrain the algorithm. So the pixel and the tag are going to want to do whatever they want to do. And that's the bad part. Right. So if we can train it off of fewer clicks than it would normally be used to train, it will train it on a repeatable action. So if found a user, they clicked and then they purchased. Excellent. You start to scale up the ad spend. Now we have 2 clicks and 2 new customers. You scale up the ad spend. Now you got 3 clicks. What is happening though in the back end of that algorithm is it's hitting the right audience more often, but you also have the right audience seeing those ads more often, even if they're not clicking.
Yeah.
So you're still benefiting on, I'm hitting the right target, and I don't need to have my CPA drop. I just need this thing to scale without increasing my NCAC.
Yeah.
So if the targeted audience is clicking less but watching more and still buying, there is only one rule that thing has to follow, is those new customers better continually go up.
Yeah.
And so that's where we look at things as a media buyer differently. And sometimes an $800 CPA can have a $50 cost per acquired first-time customer. Great. If I scale it up, does 800 stay 800? Well, it may go to 800 to 900. My cost per acquired first-time customer might be $50, maybe goes up to 55, but it's repeatable and it's controllable. And it is something that is very reliable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the, I've been doing this for 15 years. You've been doing it for just as long. It's like, this is one of the biggest breakthroughs I think we've seen on the platforms.
Oh yeah.
Would you,
100%.
I hate saying these sorts of things because it's like hyperbolic and I start to sound like Qasim Aslam. Like everything is the best in the world, the most brilliant, whatever. We just saw him on stage.
But watching on stage is halfway like a magic trick.
Magic trick. That's like, it totally is. Yeah. It's a parlor trick.
He can pull data out of a hat. I'm like, wow. How did data get in there?
He does it so convincingly and so persuasively. The point is like, this is true. It really is. It's like a big, big deal.
Yeah.
And, in the example that I texted you yesterday, I was like, I looked at the data. I said, well, when did you guys start doing cAPI imports? You said, well, it was around August 1st. So sure enough, I went through the weekly report. So 26, and then it was like 27. Then all of a sudden it was 24, and then it was 20, and then it was maybe back to 21, and then it was down to 17.
Yeah.
Then it went to 12, then it went to 10, and then it went to 8, and then it was $6.73 as of last week.
Yeah.
And that is the cost to acquire a new customer. So it took about a month and a half as we're sitting here today in the middle of September.
Yeah.
And, a credit to our team, because they've been, they've been listening to you.
And this is hard.
It's hard to do, because those first couple of weeks, the client was like, what are you guys doing? Like, CPAs don't really seem to, they still talk in CPA language. We talk about as, cost to acquire a new customer language. Right. Anyway, be that as it may, set that aside. The point is like, it does take a while for the algorithm to start working.
We think about it like, imagine taking a test. The only grade that will ever be visible is an A. Now, if you answer 10 questions and what is your grade? It's null. Do it again. Okay. And all of a sudden, as soon as they do it again, now, once they get it right, you get the A. That's essentially what we're doing. Is Meta and Google are complete closed off ecosystems. They know more about the people than we ever can. They claim 70 million signals on a user, which is what Google says. Yep. They're having, search shopping, YouTube, GSP, Discover Display, just all in Performance Max. There's massive engines that are extremely powerful. And as long as we say you're allowed to pat yourself on the back and continually do so, and I'll give you even more money and you can pat yourself on the back harder, as long as the only metric that I care about is the only thing that they can count. And that's the difference. Is if it's like, hey, I got 50 sales. Like, well, what happened? Well, we did an email blast for our 4th of July event and we had 50 sales. And Meta's like, yeah, that was all me. That doesn't happen anymore. Like, that can happen. Now, if we think about this in a media buyer or in a paid media channel perspective, it can attribute pretty much anything that's happening. We ran a test where we imported 100 conversions that never came from Facebook, and all 100 of those showed up in Facebook. But they just came under the one-day view, which means we don't have a click. We're not sure where it happened, but our model data is only missing data, probably due to regulatory regulations. So if you're going to import it to me, I'll take credit for it. So it can count everything, even if it didn't come from that channel. Think about your cost caps. So I need to have a conversion that is coming underneath $100. Well, if you do a text blast early in the morning, you can meet that cost cap and that goal even before the ad spend turns on. So as long as it's counting everything that's happening anyway and spending your money to do so, you're basically now using a platform like, I'll pay you $100 to just repeat what my Shopify data says. Right. It's already did its job today. It closed up shop, went home and fell asleep before the ad started. Before the ad spend started. That's the disconnect. And because it can count everything and will count everything, the ad spend and your results are now disconnected. Yeah. This reconnects.
That's fascinating. One of the other big questions that I always get is, and I've been at this conference for 2 days now, and this always comes up, like, you guys talk about model data all the time. Explain that sort of in layman's terms on the Meta and probably on the Google side. Yeah. Because people say, well, I look in my Meta and it looks like everything's accurate. Yeah. And I said, well, part of that, a large part, is modeled, because the AI algorithm, the algorithm for Meta is so good. They're saying, all right, if these 6 people did this, then we're going to extrapolate that these other 6 people did the same thing. So is it that simple, or what's your take on model data? How do you explain it to people?
Yeah. And I've learned a lot about the model data this last 2 months, and basically just by changing.
Hey, please stay tuned for part 2 of this episode by subscribing to this show so you don't miss the golden nuggets to help you with metrics that matter and actually scale your business. I'll see you in the next video.